Welcome to the Today's Soapbox podcast. This episode accompanies the article, A New Kind of Campaign, Gen Z, Social Media, and Mamdani's Big Win, originally published November 24th, 2025. I will be reading the article as written in the web version, with minor adjustments for the audio format. This podcast is sponsored by the Today's Soapbox website, which you can access at todays-soapbox.com. If you want to support the work I'm doing there to promote independent journalism, you can find details on the website on how to support with your engagement and money if you are willing. My name is S, and I am the main writer for today's Soapbox. The New York City mayoral election was held November 4th, 2025, drawing national attention despite other local elections being held at the same time. Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa, Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani, and independent candidate Andrew Cuomo ran to unseat current mayor Eric Adams, who had initially ran to keep his role but dropped out in September. After a hard-fought race, Zohran Mamdani won with 50.4% of the vote. Now that New York's next mayor has been decided, let's reflect on the highlights of this campaign season. To properly appreciate the way this mayoral race was received, we need to meet the players. Mayor Eric Adams was elected in 2021 and took office in 2022, succeeding Bill de Blasio. Adams previously served as an NYPD officer, Brooklyn Borough president, and U.S. Senator. In 2024, he was indicted for accepting illegal campaign funds in the form of free travel from a Turkish airline. He ran as the incumbent before dropping out of the election. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo lost the Democratic primary and instead ran on an independent ticket. He was the Attorney General of New York before being elected governor. His father, Mario Cuomo, was also New York governor from 1983 to 1994. Andrew Cuomo stepped down as governor in 2021 after at least 11 women came forward to say that he had sexually harassed them. Curtis Sliwa ran as a Republican. He founded the Guardian Angels, a volunteer unarmed crime prevention organization. He's also a supporter of grassroots movements. During his campaign, he frequently shared a now famous anecdote about his attempted murder in the back of a cab in 1992 by the Gaudis and the Gambinos. Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani ran as a Democrat. He was born and raised in a Muslim family of South Asian descent in Kampala, Uganda, before moving to New York City at the age of 7. Many disregarded him due to his limited experience in politics, but ultimately he won the race. He will become mayor at midnight on January 1st, 2026. Nowhere were these vibrant personalities more on display than in the debates between Cuomo, Sliwa, and Mamdani. These debates were quickly edited into humorous videos for social media, creating caricatures of each candidate. One example is the concept of Curtis Sliwa Core, with humorous sayings and stories compiled to present a snippet of who he is as a classic and stereotypical New York character without much discussion of his politics. From his frequent references to his attempted murder in 1992 to his use of Gen Z slang, Sliwa emerged as a fan favorite, but not as a mayoral candidate. Comments on the TikTok included, "He'd be a terrible mayor, but we need to give him a show." And, "Zohran gotta be mayor, but can Sliwa be like the mascot or something? He's so silly." This distillation of politicians into personalities instead of serious political figures contributes to young voters voting based on appearances and trends rather than seriously considering their policies. It can also make politicians who pose a legitimate threat to marginalized people appear unserious and less dangerous. One example is how President Donald Trump was elected by people who had characterized him as a champion of the working class, while his opponent, former Vice President Kamala Harris, was ridiculed for how her laughter sounds. These impressions did not take into account their actual policy plans regarding affordability. When it comes to Mamdani, there were songs and edits all over the social media feeds of young voters made by social media creators and official campaign profiles. These posts increased his visibility and took his relatively small campaign to the mainstream. Social media traction can amplify campaigns and policy proposals and bring attention to them by putting them in front of younger voters. One notable song was the edit by Shmo Yoho, or the Gregory Brothers, the minds behind Chrissy Wake Up, the inescapable Stranger Things song that was prominent after the release of Season 4. Another popular video involved Mamdani spelling his name edited to the tune of Gwen Stefani's hit Hollaback Girl. This song stuck in voters' minds and encouraged New Yorkers to learn how to pronounce his name correctly. Despite New York having vibrant, multilingual immigrant communities, people were quick to mispronounce Mamdani's name. Sociolinguist Professor Laurel Mackenzie told the New York Times, quote, "We all learned how to say Daenerys Targaryen when we were all into Game of Thrones. We can learn hard names. We can do it. We can figure out how the spellings map to the sounds. We can all get there. We just have to practice." End quote. Mamdani frequently had to correct prominent political figures and reporters to ensure that his name was pronounced correctly. This widespread viewing of this clip got young social media users acclimated and inspired to learn how to say his name. Mamdani was the subject of many racist and Islamophobic attacks. Not only was there a general lack of respect for his name and identity, but ads aired by Andrew Cuomo's super PAC featured racist messaging. One specific mailer pictured in the article drew on Islamophobic hysteria by darkening and lengthening Mamdani's beard, and specifically targeting Jewish voters by highlighting his opposition to the Israeli government and presenting him as dangerous to Jewish New Yorkers. Cuomo even went as far to agree with a radio host that said Mamdani would cheer on another 9/11, referencing the attacks on the Twin Towers in New York City on September 11, 2001. It is important to note that Mamdani consistently acknowledged the harms of anti-Semitism and his support for Jewish voters. The accusation of cheering on 9/11 and being anti-Semitic perpetuates Islamophobia by painting Muslim Americans as the enemy of and threat to Jewish Americans, who are a significant portion of the population. About 1.7 million Jews live in New York, which has about 8.5 million residents total. Jewish people have been historically marginalized and oppressed, so there is definitely a need to combat anti-Semitic violence. However, challenging anti-Semitism by characterizing another religious minority that has faced violent oppression as terrorists or threats to their safety builds Islamophobic hysteria. Mayor Adams, after historically opposing Cuomo, endorsed him and joined him in characterizing Mamdani as anti-Semitic. During his endorsement, Adams said, quote, "New York can't be Europe, folks. I don't know what is wrong with people. You see what's playing out in other countries because of Islamic extremism." End quote. New York has a history of Islamophobia after the 9/11 attacks. Due to the attackers being Islamic extremists, Muslim Americans and those perceived as Muslim were quickly stereotyped and treated poorly. Mamdani shared that this issue affected his family when he referred to his aunt who was afraid to wear her hijab on the subway. Rather than engage with this issue, his opponents chose to attack his relationship with this woman, who was the late cousin of his father, but he referred to as an aunt for his full life. Media portrayals of attacks and crimes disproportionately harm immigrant communities, such as Japanese Americans who were forced into incarceration camps following Pearl Harbor, undocumented immigrants following the murder of Laken Riley, and Muslim Americans following 9/11. When a professed Christian or white person commits a crime or an act of terror, the public does not respond the same way. Perpetrators who enact mass shootings are 96% male and 50% white. It doesn't lead to an entire demographic living in fear of hate crimes and oppression in response. While mass media can contribute to bigotry, it can also be used to spread positive messaging about marginalized people. Even though his opponents and critics continued to paint Mamdani as anti-Semitic and a threat, social media users were not swayed and continued to support him, frequently making jokes during the campaign and after his win about the attempted fear-mongering. They began calling the city New Yorkistan and joked about Mamdani seeking to implement Shakira law, playing off the term Sharia law, the sacred law of Islam that opposing voices claimed would be implemented in an Islamic revolution if Mamdani was elected. Mamdani became the Democratic nominee for mayor after winning the primary. This primary was conducted using ranked choice voting, or RCV, which allows voters to rank multiple candidates instead of casting one singular vote. This allows newer politicians with different ideas and less mainstream support to be voted for without feelings of throwing away the vote. Voters can rank a candidate like Mamdani first and less desirable candidates later to ensure that their vote is heard regardless of who it was for. Mamdani's popularity with young voters not only helped him win the election, but will continue to inspire younger candidates to run for office. Since Mamdani's win, JFK's grandson, 32-year-old social media darling Jack Schlossberg, has announced his campaign for Congress. Mamdani's win is ushering in new awareness of how to campaign on social media forcing career politicians to reassess their methods. Even candidates with politics contrary to social media trends, like Sliwa, can gain traction and visibility through social media content. These campaigns are driven and made successful by Gen Z, who are becoming more politically engaged as they come of age. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.